I'm Heidi Hutner, and this is Coffee with H2. And today on our show, we're going to be talking to my class. We just spoke with Drew and Lauret, and these are their books, which I'm excitedly holding up. They're both scientists and creative writers, and we'll be talking about that. So I just wanted to show them to everyone. And so welcome on the show, Lauret and Drew. So great to have you back for this section of the talk, which is talking to my students, because they're actually having just read both books, or almost through with yours, and no negative connotation there, just, you know, the syllabus, right? So there's this many pages by this date. And we know we're in that time of the semester when people are tired. So we're excited to be talking to you both, and we're just going to open it up for questions of the students, so welcome.
Awesome,
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. So what would you all like to ask? Yes.
I know that a lot of people think that scientists struggle to communicate their work to a more broad audience. Do you think it's the responsibility of universities to train their scientists to be able to talk the way that you two talk so easily about science to just the layman?
I'll let you answer that, because I work at a liberal arts college and Drew's at Clemson University. So.
Yeah, I'm at a state U at a land grant. And by the way, if you guys could introduce yourselves, just tell us your name as you ask the questions. You are?
I'm Shannon.
Shannon, thank you for the question.
Yes.
You know, it's should universities train scientists to communicate is what you're asking. And I think universities should train everyone to communicate, really. And so in this liberal arts tradition, and part of my background is I have a BA in zoology. And so that was a different track for me. And I don't know how many of you are obtaining BA or BS degrees, but when you look at the difference between those degrees and the ability for a student to take foreign languages, for a student to take arts and literature and humanities courses, I think that's critical. But a lot of that's been carved out of curricula, to be honest about it. And when you look at science-based curricula, the arts and humanities literature, those are the first things to go. Mm-hmm. The first things to go. So I think, yeah, we should all be trained at the upper level of science for graduate students, for example. I encourage my graduate students to take courses beyond sort of the technical so that they understand, but I have them write a lot. I have my undergrads write a lot. There's a lot of discourse in our classes, so yeah, I think it's critically important, even to the point of using technology. So the question that always gets my grad students, or many of my grad students, is we're winding up a defense. I'll say, okay, you've been spending years working at this craft of getting all this data together. So what I'd like you to do right now, real time, I'd like you to tweet out your dissertation. You got 140 characters. Well, it's 180 now, right?
280.
280.
Yeah.
So that's an abstract, really. But I'd rather hold it to 140. And so that ability to communicate, not just in the way that we do it, but to move forward, I think is important for us to do.
I'd like to add that, because I work at Mount Holyoke College, a liberal arts college, and so we don't have grad programs in most of the majors. But what is important for us is that as faculty, we realize that we need to make sure that what we do, our research, our writing, needs to be understandable by people in all disciplines and outside of academia. But not only that, for those in science, they recognize that science doesn't really occur in a rarefied vacuum, that we really need to understand how science implicates itself in society, the import of science in society, and how society is very important to the doing of science. And so it is very important to speak outside of the academic journals. And for some, it's hard to do. It's very hard to do, but it's also necessary. And we do offer programs from our communications office to help not just scientists, but all faculty become, you could call it, public intellectuals. That is, expressing their views in op-eds, going on television programs, or writing for a broader audience. And I think many of them are coming to understand that what they do is not just for themselves or for the limited audience within their field. It's very important to understand that what they do impacts us all, and then how to do it. So it's a great question. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Robin.
I'm Robin. I
Hi,
have a question
Robin.
for Lauret. I know you spoke a lot about finding your identity through like landscapes, and I'd like your opinion in terms of nowadays, when seeing as the national parks are becoming more and more privatized and they're becoming more and more unattainable, how is it going to be, how could it continue to be possible for other people to find themselves in these?
Especially if the fees go up as high as they've been proposed
Yeah.
in 17 of our parks, which is ridiculous. It's pricing it out of the range of the people. I think that's horrible, and many of us are protesting. I'm on the board of the National Parks Conservation Association. If you don't know the group, it was established just 3 years after the National Park Service was, and that was established in 1916, because the people who established the Park Service realized that if left to the whims of Congress and the executive office, the parks, and not just national parks, but national monuments, historical sites, memorials, everything, and we have more than 400 units in the system, everything might be in danger of being not just cut in funding, but eliminated. And so in 1919, this organization was established to lobby for the Park Service, to bring suits against everything that might impact it, from pollution, uranium mining, et cetera. So getting back to your question, I really think it's vitally important for us as citizens to make sure that those in the legislative branch know that they are not speaking for the people and who the people really are, and to protest and to make it clear that the national parks are the people's parks, and to do it in any way, in many ways possible. And for me, the Park Service, I know I mentioned earlier in the earlier interview that I even wanted to be a ranger there. But what I think is important is because we just celebrated the centennial of the Park Service just this past August of 2016. And in this 100th anniversary, we need to remember that the whole system are the most public sites of memory that we have in this country. Sites of memory in the sense that not only how they were formed, but the elements that are preserved within them, and this includes the big nature parks like Yellowstone, Yosemite, the Everglades. They all contain elements of this country's history, and they all are avenues by which we can learn about the often unspoken narratives, narratives of racism, narratives of bigotry, narratives of silencing, narratives of hatred, narratives of politics done, behind the scenes. And by understanding the historical implications of parks, we as a public can understand more of ourselves. We just need to make sure that that is done, and it's hard to do. I know I didn't answer your question fully, but ask another to go with it. Or Drew, do you want to go on?
No, I think, Lauret, the people's parks, and what happens to the identity of not just people but the parks,
Right.
when they become privatized, so they're no longer the people's. They're prone to the whims of stockholders, right? And marketing. And so the people, as Lauret have said, we have to claim.
Right.
We
There are parks.
have to claim them as our parks to make sure that that doesn't happen. So there's still power that resides with the people in that, and that's and hopefully that gets exercised. I won't go too much further out on my political limb there.
Oh, go ahead.
But
I'll go with
Please
you.
do.
you've got to speak up.
Yeah.
You can no longer. There's a danger to standing by as you see what's important to you endangered, and we're at a point now of unfortunately being past action to reaction. So how would you react to that? Maybe it's okay for you to see Yellowstone with a petroleum company underwriting it. Maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay for geysers to have corporate sponsors.
No.
Maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay for, that bison to have some tag around its neck that's a corporate sponsor. I don't know, but you guys are going to decide that, really.
We are too.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're at a point where, in many ways, who we are politically is sort of set. For that next generation of movers and shakers and how you guys see things, that's the critical thing. I talk to my students all the time about the 1973 oil embargo, and how many of you remember that? Right, none of you up here. We remember it. We can remember that, but none of you can remember that. And so, in your scale of time, what's important? How do you reinforce what's important to you, and whether or not they're your parks or not? And trace just this amazing journey across this landscape and describing it. And I envy Lauret as a creator and how she brings life to rock. Mm-hmm. How she brings life to rock and color, and you can see this. And she talks about sky in her veins. So I think if you can tell those stories, if you can internalize those stories of yourself on the land, whether it be public spaces or private, then you'll work to preserve those places.
Right.
But I think you have to personalize them in some way.
That's
so
important.
Figure out where your place is and then fight to protect it.
Right. If I could just add to that, and thank you. Thank you for your extremely kind words. They're mutual, very much with the home place. We are facing, with this current administration, literally some laws, some of what we've taken for granted that will be undone. But that undoing need not be permanent, and it won't be permanent. It can be fixed. There may be some cost to that, but you should know, as far as the privatization, there have already been, and within the public comment period, I don't know if you know this about the proposal, they only gave 30 days, and we're already partway, almost midway through that 30-day comment period. Millions of responses, no way, have already been submitted. So the people are speaking out. There isn't a silence. But how the people's words, the people's wishes will be then received by the Department of the Interior and the Secretary of the Interior and, of course, the President, we have yet to determine. But we're not stepping down. And NPCA alone, and then there's the Wilderness Society, the Nature Conservancy, all of it, Environmental Defense, NRDC, all of these are fighting this. And if you look at the legal actions that are being pushed forward, they're almost becoming countless. So, yes, there's a fight back. Let's see what happens. Okay, great question, too.
Mm-hmm.
So could we have one more question from the
And it
class?
could be a hard one. It could be anything. It could be dicey. Yeah.
My name's Hunter. In the home place, you talk about how race is important to your ties with nature, and in Trace, and in the interview, we were talking about how the injustices associated with race and all that are gone in nature, or for the most part. Is it important or is nature, do you each feel that nature is important for accepting individualities and differences, or is it more about accepting who we are as humans and equals, or is it a little bit of both? I know it's a little bit abstract question,
Wow.
but
You did come up with a good one, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh.
It's for me. It all begins. My relationship with you begins with you, and so I want to recognize who you are as an individual. One of the statements that really galls me is when someone tells me, and they think that it brings me to some level of comfort, but they'll say, "Oh, I don't see color," and I think that's terrible, because look at all the beautiful hues here.
Yeah.
Look at all the beautiful hues. It's not that I don't want you to see color, just as birds see different colors, but I want you to appreciate those colors. So that's on an individual basis, right? So nature recognizes us by unique adaptation as individuals, right? And how we move through the system. But then as humans, and so as who we are writ large, as Leopold talks about cogs in the wheel and intelligent tinkering and not removing anything without understanding its role, that as humans that we place ourselves and humble ourselves really to understand who we are, Homo sapiens sapiens. You know, we're the knowing ape. I would like to say we're a knowing ape.
Right.
But then as a knowing ape, how do we fit? Who are we? Who are we in the system? So what's our role as compared to a chipmunk or you know, a pasque-flower or any other being? So that's, I hope that gets at your question. It's both for me in thinking about what nature does and sort of seeing color and appreciating it and then moving forward from there.
Hear to everything you said. And I think that one of the challenges that I faced when I was your age was realizing that I had grown up not just in an educational system, but in a society with media images that tended to fragment experience in a way that those experiences artificially separated race from nature, and they could never be disentangled. So I think it's also behooves all of us, when we're reading, when we're seeing, to question what we read and see, especially in public venues, because the power to segregate memory and story has always occurred along with the power to segregate people, to separate people, like, you know, me from you, us from them. And it's recognizing that it's we and how to get through to that we, and that we includes nature. So it's really being not just mindful, but if you can be heart mindful about what is being divisive here and how can I see how it's really together. And so that's a really great question. And it's a question that to answer it, one must live openly and responsibly. So I'm really grateful to you for asking it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hunter.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great question. So I wish we could stay and keep talking, and we will. There's more to come. And everyone watching, you really must read these books. They're so important. And I thank my class for reading them with me and with us and being here and asking great questions. We'll continue the conversation. Thanks so much. This is Q&A with Coffee with Hx2. And more to come. You can see more of our videos online. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you,
Thank
Heidi.
you.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.